Food and weight obsession can be exhausting. Losing weight, gaining weight, dieting, feeling like a failure because you missed a workout, binged, overate, or gained all the weight back. The cycle is endless and it can be maddening. But I'm here to say you can stop the mental madness. You can take back control of your food behaviors, but you have to face your fears, you have to ask for help, and make a change. I am Leslie M. Thornton, permanent weight loss coach from hpwl.co. This is Hypnosis for Permanent Weight Loss, and I know you can make this happen. On this podcast, you will hear how to stop the mental madness, love your body, trust your food decisions so you can create a life of happiness, freedom, and inner peace. The Hypnosis for Permanent Weight Loss podcast. I am your host, Leslie M. Thornton. Today, we are joined by Torild Boe. Am I saying your last name correctly?
Yes, perfect.
Awesome. Thank you. So just to introduce Torild properly, she's passionate about supporting women as they navigate the complexities of midlife while balancing home responsibilities and career demands. Originally from Norway, based in London, she's a mom of 3 sons, a divorcee, and someone who has experienced perimenopause unknowingly. Having personally faced the stress of holding it all amidst sleep deprivation, anxiety, and overwhelm, what she calls the perfect storm, Torild deeply resonates with the unique challenges you may be encountering. Her mission is to help women avoid burnout and thrive in midlife and beyond. Through her core energy coaching and wellness program, she provides support to help you regain control, find clarity and purpose during this transformative stage of life. Such important work to do. Torild, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, I've gotten the pleasure to get to know you through different women's networking opportunities, and your energy has always been such a light. And of course, in reading your bio and getting to know you and all of my clientele, usually being in midlife themselves and experiencing menopause, I just knew that I wanted to bring you onto the podcast to be able to share that because I'm not in that stage of life. But given my experience with working with many women in that stage, I love working with women in that stage because I just feel like I did a values assessment at one point and I don't know, it somehow gauged your values like based on what stage of life you're usually in these different values. And the person who did the assessment for me, he was like, you have like the values of someone who's a woman who's in like her 50s or 60s, like, and like, you know, not as much, you know, in the where you usually are at 30s or whatever. I'm not sure how that happened or whatever, but I read something that was saying how there's this pivotal point kind of spiritually for women where they have this change where instead of being focused on being a good mother, a good daughter, you know, having a good, you know, just worrying about the career and this and that, that like it's almost like this, yeah, life altering moment where they start to ask deeper questions. And they really start caring about like their happiness, their spirituality or connection with God, the universe, you know, and just, yeah, just all those kind of deeper, more meaningful things. And that's what I really see happens for, you know, my clients. And it's just like, I love supporting them. And I'm sure, you know, we'll talk about how that comes up. And so when people, you know, sometimes there's weight gain in that transition because it can be so confronting and there's like different things happening as values are shifting. And so what I love to help these women kind of see is that it's not just the menopause and the physiological factors, but also like some of these inner changes, right? Of the, you know, wanting to have that connection and deeper meaning in life and these types of things that can also be contributing. And so if we can actually like lean into that and celebrate that and also get the support that we need to go through the transition, you know, because the brain will kick up and say, this is wrong, this is bad, you know, you shouldn't be doing this, or you know, this weight gain is bad and I'm unhealthy and I'm headed, but it's like, it's actually just all could just be a sign of like, ooh, there's this awesome transformation occurring. But we could be missing that if we're not seeing it for what it is. So super excited to have you share your story.
Yes, yeah, me too.
To
Yeah.
inspire others to maybe see the same thing in themselves. So Yeah, if you would just share a little bit about how you started to do this and your experience getting to this stage of life.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you, Leslie. Thank you so much. And it's spot on what you were saying. So my own story is that I lived in London for some time when I was younger, and I came back in London in 97. I was 27, got married, had 3 kids, and did the work, career, all those things. And I was traveling quite a lot. So I traveled to China, I traveled far away places, organizing events, and typically I would stay away for like 10 days at a time, which with a, young baby at home, the youngest was a baby when I was, well, this is back in 12 years ago, even more probably. My timeline gets quite confused, but I was around 42. I'm 54 now.
Mm.
And even before then, when my youngest was I think it was about 3 months, maybe a bit. No, it would have been more. Anyway, it doesn't matter. He was a baby, and I was away in China working at the event, and I loved my job. I really did. At the same time, I really missed my children. And I didn't sort of, at the time, I didn't feel like I had an option. I couldn't do both. So I decided there and then that I would give up my job and be a stay-at-home mom. And fast forward 3 months or so, I found myself at the playground a lot. I was really bored because I didn't like being there all the time. I would have liked to have a bit of both. Fast forward another few years, I guess, having been at home for some time, the marriage started to, be impacted, and I didn't feel happy. And I didn't know at the time that I was also going through hormonal changes. I was around 40, 42 then. I mean, it's not so long ago, but everything seemed, it feels a little bit confused time-wise. So I went through separation with my 3 young boys. And at the same time, unawarely, I was in perimenopause, this stage leading up to the actual event itself, which actually the actual menopause, as your listeners probably know, but just to reiterate, it's just the one day or even one moment after you haven't had your period for 12 consecutive months. So everything before that is the perimenopause. And this is the stage where we are experiencing the fluctuations in symptoms and impact thereof. So I found myself incredibly anxious, overwhelmed, which, you could think, well, you would do when you go through a separation anyway.
And
But
when you say separation, just to clarify, what exactly do you mean by that?
oh, I see. So it's probably different
Yeah,
words
I'm
in
wondering if if you say separation, you said separation from your boy. So what does that mean?
separation from my now ex-husband. So the
Oh,
actual
okay. So it was with, okay,
years
your
or so
marriage.
before
Okay, got it.
of the marriage. Thanks
Okay,
for
we say the same
clarifying.
thing. I thought that you had said it about your boys. So,
Oh,
okay,
yeah,
great.
yeah.
Got it. So
Thank
that
you.
was happening as well.
Yeah, and we now know that stress exacerbates symptoms.
Hmm.
So it was only because I had my first night sweat around the same time. And that's the only thing also I kind of knew about menopause and night sweats and hot flushes and all this. And so I experienced this, and now I know that I did go through perimenopause whilst also going through a divorce. And this is not like, I'm not unique in that, but this led me then to later on in life, as I've moved through the stages of menopause and the divorce and having kids and a career and all the things that we in midlife may experience. I call it the perfect storm because we may also have aging parents. We may have other things going on whilst juggling career and home life. And so this is kind of what led me to want to help others because I had nobody to talk to at the time. I mean, I know that things have changed a lot in the last couple of years in the UK, probably in the US as well, and it's much more destigmatized, but we still have a long way to go. And especially in the workplace, which is kind of also my passion. But anyway, so that's a very summarized story of my story. And I'm also a trained yoga teacher, mindfulness teacher, breath practitioner, and I kind of bring everything together into this body mind awareness work with my coaching. So yeah.
Love that so much. And I'm curious, so you said it's not uncommon that people will go through a separation or a divorce during menopause, like at the same time that menopause is happening. So
Yeah.
is there like a thought process to that of like just because of like it creates more conflict just because of the hormonal shifts happening and it may not be necessarily true? That
Well, there's that, and many women also experience dryness, and sex might be more painful. There's a huge range of symptoms that we hadn't previously talked about or been aware of. Um, and um, and in the UK, there was a really interesting survey done by a divorce lawyer and a menopause doctor a few years ago, where it turned out, I think it's around 40% of women who go through divorce in the UK are between 45 and 55.
Mm.
So that's like a huge red flag, right? That's exactly the same period as we go through perimenopause on average.
Wow, that's huge. I don't
Yeah.
think I've ever heard anyone talk about that. So what are some of the other signs that aren't as talked about other than vaginal dryness and, you know, the
Yeah.
different pieces? Would love to hear
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, I think the one that bothers women the most and impacts women in the workplace as well, and that's why they're looking at implementing support in the workplace more and more, are those psychological symptoms. And again, I'm not going to be boring about research and surveys, but there was a survey done, University of London, I think, where it turns out we are 40% more likely to experience depression during perimenopause.
Mm.
And it's during perimenopause, it's not before or after, but that stage is very profound for a lot of women. And I think especially those of anxieties, if you're already experiencing a little bit of anxieties from before, it feels like it's really heightened and it's much more impactful and debilitating than maybe it would have been. And so mix that with a lack of sleep and forgetfulness, brain fog, and you have like a whole kind of fine cocktail of impactful symptoms. And not to say that everybody experiences this, but 1 in 3 women here in the UK find that these are debilitating symptoms and it has an impact outside of the home, but also, of course, in the home and then in relationships. So it's really important, I feel, that we are made aware and we are prepared so that we know how we can best support ourselves and those around us.
Wow, this is so fascinating to me. Thank you for sharing this. And I've also heard, there's so much more talk as well about postpartum depression and anxiety. And it does seem to me, as I, learn of different people and knowing maybe how they were before and after, that if they did have, more anxious ways of being prior, that they seem to be, more likely to have like really dark thoughts and different things like that. So it sounds like it might be similar that there could be, if you already maybe were more stressed or more than like during menopausal times when hormones are shifting, it could get exacerbated. Is that
Yeah, quite
correct?
possibly, but also life experiences such as I told before, as divorce and other things like aging parents or other potential
Mhm.
stresses around you will exacerbate the symptoms. So
Yeah.
stress certainly doesn't help. But we are all unique. Not one woman experiences this the same. And
Mm.
the thing is, I think also that those who sort of fly through this and think that, oh, that's not a big issue, they may not kind of sympathize, or empathize with other women who are really struggling. And 1 in 3 do. So it's really important that we are kind of supporting each other with this as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. I love that, keeping that part in mind of just it's completely different for everyone, where someone it could be very much like a hormonal imbalance physiologically. But for someone else, maybe just learning some of the, emotional support stuff for themselves. Outside of that, and like different coping mechanisms or whatever. And I think about like the weight gain as well. So if someone is experiencing that, all the stress and anxiety that, because there's so many things I feel like that happens around that time period, like you said, like aging parents, kids, gone away, you know, and then you have the hormonal stuff on top of it that's
Mm.
affecting all of these different types of things. And then I'm curious your thoughts, like, do you see there being like a spiritual component to this as well? Like I was talking about
Mhm.
in the beginning of like, this is kind of meant to happen to, initiate more like growth and connection to
Yeah.
yourself and your purpose.
Yeah, definitely. And you're
Mhm.
so right. You see that in a lot of women. And I feel like this is such an important stage where you really have an opportunity to form your second stage in life. And very often, because for so many different reasons, maybe if you have children, they may have moved out, they're growing up, and there this opportunity, I really feel that to reset in a way, or restart, or whatever you want to call it. But I think that traditionally the menopause and these female transitions brought women together as well more and more. And I certainly feel that for myself. I feel really drawn to being more around like-minded women where you feel held, you feel supported, and there's an opportunity to be who you are and to find, not least, find who you are, because a lot of what's happening throughout hormonal changes is also that you're feeling like you're losing yourself. So you don't recognize the person that you once used to be. And then with these different life transitions, maybe the likelihood of feeling like you're losing yourself is even higher. So this is such a great place in life, I feel, to really reconnect with the person that you are, and all the words like purpose, values, all these things come into it. But it's exciting because you can really create a new path forward for yourself. So yeah, I think it's a great time to connect with that sort of spiritual person, whatever you want to call it, but the deepness of who you really are at the core.
Mhm. I
Uh,
love that. I keep referencing this podcast that I heard recently that said a few different things, but one being that, one of the main things that we should focus on as human beings is understanding ourselves.
yeah.
That is like the most valuable thing that you could take your time to do, because with whatever decisions that you're making in life, if you're doing it from a space of knowing yourself, like
Mm.
how much more aligned, those decisions get to be. And I think what you're also pointing to is how, um, yeah, like how your experience about this transitionary time, that it could be really tumultuous and hard and difficult, like it sounds like it really was for you, because you were alone and wasn't sure what was going on, and right, experiencing all those different things. um but if you have the mindset of it, of like, this is an opportunity to really like reconnect with yourself, etc., and like create a new path forward, like how much more exciting, that can be. And what this podcast also said was how like our life purpose, whatever that is for each one of us, like it's going to happen no matter what we do. But the difference is how our inner experience is while we are experiencing it. So, and how that can actually affect us even in the afterlife. Like, so how important it is to have, a system of support, a guide, so that you can, not just experience stress and anxiety through the transition, but actually like gratitude and appreciation, as well as highlighting like what is amazing about the challenges that are going on right now. And I can speak from personal experience. It's like, if I didn't have that higher spiritual understanding of what hard times may be teaching me, I feel like my life would feel not as great at all. Um,
Yeah.
so thank you for providing that space for people. Um, Love that. And what would you say, like, as you were going through that time, if someone is listening that's, going through a divorce, or, going through this time, with menopause and hormonally and psychologically and all these types of things, like, I don't know, what was the hardest part about all of that for you? You mentioned being alone. Um, but yeah, maybe if you could paint the picture even more.
Yeah. I think initially when you go through divorce and if you have children, it's the mourning, the what's been, what has been, and acceptance. It's very much kind of on par with the perimenopause, menopause, because I think a lot of women mourn what has been, and find it difficult to accept even the word menopause and even accept that we are aging, etc. So it's very much the same. I mean, it was very painful. I was young, I was in a different country, and this isn't about me at all, but my experience felt like I lost everything, as if somebody just sort of ripped the carpet underneath my feet.
Mm.
And a lot of it is also about how we are taught and shaped and formed to believe that things should look. So you almost have to kind of go back a little bit and allow yourself to rewrite the rules as well. And I felt I had to do that because in the area where I lived or live, well, it's a very sort of family oriented area and a lot of coupley things, and you felt a little bit on the outside of all that. And then my friend and I, one of my best friends and I, she went through a separation at the same time, and we just decided that okay, we got to make the most of this, the best for this, for our boys, for our children. So we got together and we did Mother's Days together, we did Christmases, and we did all these things. And it was actually really, my boys still talk about it. It was such a lovely, in a way, period as well. But my point is just that although things can feel so numbingly hard and like you cannot, believe that this is happening to you, at some point when you do the work that you do and I do, you get to a point where you can think, why is this happening for me?
Mm.
And whilst you're in the midst of it, it may be really difficult to see that. But I think that's such a powerful question to ask ourselves, in many situations in life. And now, of course, I can see why it happened for me. And so
Yeah,
how
so speak to that for a second. How did it happen for you? What do you see from it now?
Yeah, and this isn't about the person. I'm not, we have a perfectly fine relationship. It's not about that, but I think it has allowed me to really discover the woman who I truly am and the one I want to be in the world, and also the type of mom that I want to be. And um, it kind of has brought me back, and it's taken time. It's taken time. I've come out of another relationship recently, and again, I think maybe I've allowed other people to hold me back. And so I really more and more I can see that these things have happened for me so that I could be fully who I am. And that's always a journey. And of course, that's always work in progress. But I do feel much more connected to me than I did before. Yeah, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. And I'm sure that's like really inspiring to other people. My belief is, you know, similar to what I was saying before of like understanding yourself, but like being fully self-expressed and like fully knowing who you are. Like to me, it's like my soul will never ever be okay with not, continuing to discover and connect with her. Um, and so change is going to be, inevitable as that continues to be chipped away, in God or the universe's timing. Um, but yeah, to just kind of like, and to see that like relationships change when that happens, because we will attract a totally different, human being or person, um, as we continue to become more of ourselves. And I think, that can be the most painful thing that I think, that people deal with when they have the opportunity to change is the fear of, family falling away, husbands or wives falling away. Um, and it's a lot, I have a client right now that's going through a lot of transition. And she and her husband are really, doing the work for themselves. And, so she's going through a lot of stress and anxiety and a lot of feeling aloneness and whatever. And, but having that, I invited her to look at the same question that you're saying of like, how is this happening for me? And it's like, so if the theme of what's happening right now is a rediscovery of who am I, right? As she's discovering more about like her upbringing and how her parenting was really, kind of setting her up to have, these challenges in her adult life. Naturally, as you heal those initial relationships, it's like you can see that there's isn't that same resonance with partners anymore. I have a friend who she was estranged from her mother, um for many years. And then she did a personal development course where she actually made peace with her mom through a letter. She wrote a letter just kind of saying thank you or whatever. And to her surprise, her mom wrote back. And it was very kind letter. And then very shortly after, her mom let her know that she actually was diagnosed with breast cancer.
Mm.
And because they had reestablished that relationship, my friend, felt called to want to go and help her. And then right around the same time, she had this very clear awareness that her husband was not, they were not aligned. Like she was very clear that it was not. And so that marriage, but like it happened right in a row with getting complete with parents. And then she was able to take care of her mom and she passed away, last year or whatever. Now she's living in Florida. She's in a new relationship and like she's more aligned. So it's like that takes so much courage, but there's also just the presence of what is. So just for anyone listening, it's like it can be a good sign that things are falling away. But if we're not giving it the label of being like, well, of course this is happening because I am healing myself, and these other things in my life. And while it's so painful and very hurtful and can cause stress eating and all the rest, like this is actually a good sign. But if you don't, again, have a coach to kind of hold that mirror up, if that's not your normal way of seeing things, yeah, your experience can be totally different.
Definitely. And it I think I decided at the time, and I think this is quite important for many of us. I decided at the time that no matter what, no matter how upset I was and how hard it was, I was not going to go into victimhood. And that was a big thing for me, and it continues to be so. And it requires awareness. It requires awareness. It requires a commitment to yourself. And I think a lot of the time, and especially perhaps through these transitions when you have the hormonal changes on top, it can be very easy just sort of get by and be so busy and be so all consumed in all the things outside. So we don't have the energy. We just want to sleep. We just want to, eat enough or whatever. And so we don't have the energy, we think, to look inside because we feel like it's going to require too much. But actually, if you turn it around and you start with that, you will gain so much energy and you will gain so much from it. And it's not to say that it's always an easy journey, right, Leslie? It's not always easy,
No.
but wouldn't have it any other way. And it feels now like the postmenopausal years, which is basically until I die. I'm setting myself up for that. And I see that with women I work with as well, that there's a sense of excitement, there's a sense of something different. It can be looked at very differently, 48, 50 and beyond. Perhaps you need more me time. Perhaps you need more downtime, more silence. And it's not comfortable to everyone to sit in silence with their own thoughts and feelings and emotions. So it's work in progress, but I really feel like it's worth doing and investing in.
Mm, my gosh, absolutely. Yeah. And I love what you're talking about for the not going into victim and that being a commitment. I feel like I've been exercising that muscle over the last couple years, but like what you're saying is wanting me to like deepen it even more. But I have found that like if I start to slip into like victim mentality at all, that I will produce results and like manifest like the next perfect action so much faster when I like catch it and then take full ownership and say like, okay, well, that's not working, but how can I make it work? Like,
Yes. Yeah.
and then immediately like something better comes in. So, for anyone listening, it's just like it is so awesome. And so, obviously like weight gain for my audience or, whatever of just kind of being like, oh, like it's menopause and I can't do anything about it, or, oh, whatever, just that can be that voice of victimhood, that's so innocent and yet kind of running the show in a lot of cases of if you can just like overwrite that and be like, okay, and how can I take back control, and
Yeah.
still help this outcome to be the best possible. Um, and that's where taking that one hump of reaching out to Torild, reaching out to me, like reaching out to like whatever, does feel like it's like, are we missing what the universe or God is giving us as a sign to like be the life raft, whatever that that Bible story is of like, there's a flood and the guy's on the uh uh roof, and like all the water's coming up and he's praying to God, like, God, please, just, save me from this situation or something. And, um, different boats come by and, he's just saying, please, anyway. And he was like, God, how come you didn't help me? And he was like, I sent 3 boats, and it's just like, but he wasn't able to see them or see them as his actual help or life raft. And so for me, like the way that my life has continued to expand is because like I see everything as my possible life raft and I take action to jump onto the raft, and I think that's people's major issue. That's why I'm so action oriented is like when you see it go, it's like the worst thing to do is take no action, but like you just got to take some action towards what you want. So occasionally someone before they're joining my program, they're like, oh, well, I want to research other programs. And I'll be like, I actually don't want you to research other programs. Like we talked about this of these things that you need. And I know that I can help you get those things. Like the worst place to be is in a space of indecision and not taking action. It's like some action is better than no action. So get on the damn boat,
Mhm.
and like just trust whatever is coming in for you. So yeah, it's just there's such better ways to get to experience whatever it is that could be hard in our life if we just say yes to whatever it is that we feel that we need. So love it. So
Uh,
tell us specifically, like, obviously you bring in, which I love, it's like not only just the coaching support of someone who gets it and having like a helpful conversation, but also the breath work, the yogic practices, like the inner stuff that can actually support you as you're going through the quote unquote storm, perfect storm. That's what you call it. Is that right?
Yes, yeah. Yeah, because when you think that the psychological symptoms, and especially those of anxieties, are so, common and impact you potentially, then we tend to be a lot up in our head. And I know this for sure. I went through huge anxieties through my pregnancies and all hormonal changes. So I know very well what it's like to be in my head. And I have to work with this myself continuously. It's an ongoing practice. So the work that I do is very much about bringing yourself home, bringing yourself into the body, being more connected to what's happening in your body as well, because we hold a lot of emotions in our body. It doesn't mean that it's a full-on yoga practice necessarily, but I combine these things in my group programs and the one-to-one. So, for example, at the moment, I'm working with a lady in corporate who found herself all of a sudden withdrawing from opportunities from being on stage, and she used to love it. And we work together very much in starting the sessions. We're just sort of getting out of that old story from the head and into the body. And this is not sort of a new thing at all, but I find it so helpful and impactful instantly, because it happens instantly. Once you sit and start breathing and focus on the breath, or you do a little movement practice or mindfulness, guided mindfulness practice, you can instantly come back to yourself in a much greater way than if you just tell yourself that, yes, I'm going to be, thinking this thought or whatever. But actually, so connecting the body mind, I think, is really important. But then also together with that, of course, the mindset shifts and the coaching and peeling the layers and coming back to who you are more at the core. So yeah, I do combine the two or the three.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Something I love in neurolinguistic programming training, we teach about values change and how, you can be cruising along and, you're just on even ground, like you probably felt when you were married and had your kids initially, um, and so it's like that's like A to B, but then where you then this starts to happen, this evolution, and then it's like you see that there's like a D that's like across like a open gap, and it's like, ooh, I want to get to D, which could just be like happiness, life satisfaction, more fulfillment, more energy, more motivation, whatever. And so people want to just be able to jump from B to D.
Yes. Yeah.
But where, it's normal that as you're going through that shift, you have to go down and there's like a divot down to what C is. So it's
Mm.
like it gets worse, emotionally, mentally a little bit before it can get better. And then you actually end up on that higher D plane.
Yeah.
So like hiring a coach at that time when you're noticing that you're having all this turmoil going on,
Mm.
when people start noticing, like if it's like weight gain and divorce is happening, or you get into a car accident, or you lose your job, or you whatever, like sometimes these external things or other relationships fall away, or there's more arguments, whatever, like could be a sign that like some of this evolution is starting to happen. So again, like having someone who knows how to support you also with the mental and emotional pieces as you're
Mm.
dipping down to C and hold your hand so you can actually get to D is
Yeah.
like crucial,
Yeah.
So
And that's such a lovely way of saying it, holding your hand, because it is kind of holding your hand to bring you home. I heard somebody say that this the other day, holding your hand to bring you home. And that's what it's kind of all about. And then if we can practice doing that without the attachment, again, that's a practice in progress all the time, isn't it? But without the attachment to how it should look like, but actually creating your own then way forward. That's aligned to who you truly are. And that's exciting work.
it is. It
Yeah.
is because there's
Yeah.
like so much freedom, everything on the other side. And obviously that's why we keep waving these flags, is because we know how good it feels to actually get on the other side and know it's actually possible for people and not want to have other people endure what you had to endure for as long as we did. Um, Yeah, and, like, so obviously I bring people to food freedom who have been dieters their whole life, and, it's so normal that as this change starts to happen that, like, you keep wanting to go back, and it's like, "Oh, but I remember when I used to run every day and I knew how good it felt to be perfectly strict on my, eating plan," and, like, all of this type of stuff, and it's, like, so normal, but, like, we need to upgrade the system of, like, "And that's not you anymore," like,
Mm.
that worked at that time in the past, but you're like a completely different person, and what you said you want is food freedom. So,
Yeah.
like, the way to get there is quite different than what you've done in the past. So, like, we
Yeah.
gotta keep holding your hand as you go through those hard things and play the game. But
Yeah.
it can be fun.
Yes, yeah. And that's
Mhm.
so relevant also to this stage perimenopause, because actually what you've done in the past in terms of food, diet, exercise, everything, sleep is going to look different to what you're going to need now and going forward. So yeah, that's a really key point.
Yeah. Are there specific foods that people going through menopause should be incorporating or
I'm not a nutritionist, but I do know that you do need more protein to
Mm,
support the bones. Osteoporosis is also something that some women experience post-menopause. So more protein, fiber, more whole foods, less sugar, less alcohol, all the obvious things really. But
mhm,
it does really impact how you sleep and your cortisol levels on the increase, etc. So
mm.
yeah.
Yeah, gotta bring the whole thing in. That's awesome. Amazing. Well, thank you so much for what you're doing. Thanks for being here. So how can people find out more about you and your program that you offer?
Yeah, thank you, Leslie, for having me. I've really enjoyed it. And if you out there would like to connect, I am on Instagram, Torild.Boe, and on LinkedIn, I'm quite active, Torild Boe Stokes. I guess that's enough. My web address is torildboe.com. So please feel free to email me or connect in any way that's feels right. Yeah.
Love that. And Torild is Torildboe, Torild Boe.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Definitely check out Torild's stuff. Oh gosh, anyone who gets to work with her energy and lights and, her being is very lucky. And I'm just curious. So I just had this thought earlier of what did you do for work prior to doing this? Because I know what were you doing prior, just so people can also connect with you in that way?
Okay, yes, I worked in corporate. Is that what you mean? My previous
Yeah.
job? Yeah.
Yes.
Right. I
Hmm.
was in corporate, but then when I got pregnant, I got really into the hypnosis, hypnobirthing, and breath work and yoga. But I was always kind of working in the maritime industry, so male-dominated industries. So I also go into companies and help out coaching and awareness work around life stages for women. So yeah, but now I'm full-time, my own boss.
Absolutely. That's great. I love that for you. Yeah. And yeah, so it sounds like good balance of the masculine, of knowing all the work things like that, as well as the feminine practices that you brought in to
That's
make.
a whole nother podcast, Leslie, isn't it? The
My
feminine
gosh,
masculine. Yeah.
exactly. Absolutely, it is. Awesome. Torild, thank you so much for being here. And if you're ready to get free from your food, body, and weight journey, then text the word hypnosis to 1-855-232-5483 for my free webinar. It's actually brand new now. And yeah, we'll see you for the next episode. If you are serious about taking action on your struggle with food, body, and weight, then this is for you. Go ahead and text the word hypnosis to 855-BE-ALIVE. That's 855-232-5483. Immediately after texting that number, you will get access to our free training that will tell you why you can't figure the food, body, and weight thing out, why you can't keep weight off even after you've been successful in the past, and how to actually overcome it, including a mini hypnosis session at the end. Don't miss out. Text the word hypnosis to 855-BE-ALIVE. That's 855-232-5483.